Oh hey, didn't see you there. Well, it is February. What other topic am I gonna talk about? I guess I could talk about that, but I'm not exactly an expert on that subject matter. Then again, I guess I'm not an expert on romance either. Well, this just got sad. Cut to the narration. Romance, the genre of the feel-good feelings, wholesome relations, and commitments that presumably last longer than when a kid with ADHD finds a new hobby. Ever since the creation of man, romance has always had a thematic presence in media. The first story of the Bible focuses on a man who fell in love with his own rib, which frankly sounds like a light novel title. And from there, the portrayal of love has had its many iterations, from the old English plays to classic movies, to poems for partners, to saucy books with beachfront property in the bargain bins. Games, music, art, and presumably real life, romance is just a functionally present motif and tool almost anyone can identify. Romance in anime in particular is a fascinating titan of the style. As we see anime gain more and more in the mainstream with each passing day, we also see more romance-oriented tales, or the aspects of the romance of a story, rise in prominence too. It's not just the Fruits Baskets or the Kimi no Todoke's anymore, there are the Domakanos and the Watakors, the Tonikawas and the Kaguya-samas out there too, having made significant names for themselves all while projecting uniquely creative ideas, attitudes, and narratives that make lonely lives less lonely. That's gonna be me one day. And so, we're talking about romance anime, its role as a genre itself, its evolution and the perceived domination of the industry, and the dichotomy of the numerous forms it takes, whether it be a simple love story, a lettuce guac bacon tomato quest, a sister waifu situation, or all else that frankly probably belongs more in a video about hentai. Eventually. Now, to get out of the way, what is romance? Boy, you are asking the wrong guy, me. Okay, yeah, this is a situation where I don't think I have to explain what it is, unlike something like, say, shonen. And if I do have to explain for you, either you, A, are a child and shouldn't be watching my videos, B, are a robot trying to justify your existence, or C, are a Hathaway. But I guess you could reform the question to, what is romance in the context of anime? And the better question is, what isn't it? The oddities of anime lend themselves to be very out there in terms of concept. Aside from the standard vanilla takes you typically see in a show like Golden Time, there's the good old Japanese tradition of trying to weird out the rest of the world. From dolls and Lovecraftian nightmares to little sisters and a god's literal hand, romance anime is not short on new ideas to appeal to the love-starved. And hear me out, for as unusual as a good chunk of these are, I do kinda see a point to them. Love in general is a very complex but understandable construct. If portrayed right, then they can reveal a fair bit about the human condition, even when seen in a very illogical situation. There's a good example of this found in when supernatural battles became commonplace. For a brief summary, it's about a book club that develop superpowers and have to learn to live with them, all while the main characters are chuny boys surrounded by these possible waifus. You see, the powers represent puberty, while the main character has to learn to grow up. Metaphors. Now, personally, I think the show is just fine. It has great animation and themes, but the characters are only okay, and the writing can be a bit cringy, even if that is the point. But honestly, that's not what's memorable about it. There's a very phenomenal, distinct scene where one of the girls has to confront the main character about his chuny tendencies. She addresses that she can't understand anything he prattles on about, while pouring her heart and soul into what feels like a one-way connection. It's a very revealing, poignant revelation based on the writing, emotions, and especially voice acting of the monologue. It's so well done, telling not just the pros and prowess of the direction, but the intelligence behind the character writing, as she can understand what she wants to know out of the MC. It's undoubtedly the best scene of the anime, and definitely the most remembered by all 47 people who recall this show. You see these kinds of scenes in all sorts of romantic subtexts, from confessions to infatuation moments to even more physical confrontations. There's just a humanity to them that bring out the euphoria of love and the adrenaline of fear to make these situations between characters relatable and interconnecting. Functionally, romance as a genre isn't just a means of projection to vicariously living some love. Don't get me wrong, watching people live out the drama of love triangles or misunderstandings based on poor communications is great popcorn material, but the same could be said about World War II documentaries. Romance can, and usually does, act as a commentator on ideas surrounding relationships, empathy, personal growth, degeneracy, and obviously love and all that surrounds it. Plus, there's probably less genocide involved. So you have shows that revel in a multitude of aspects, like mutual trauma healing, chivalry, autism, grudge-bearing, blackmail, and naturare. Okay, I didn't say they'd all be winners, but they're still far from the worst out there. And again, not a lot of genocide on their end. The exploration of these interlinking topics captured in a way only anime can design around is pretty riveting, and as we see more adaptations try to take up more expensive commentaries, it'll only become more engaging while also simultaneously becoming more perverted. But don't take that as a sign of oversaturation. Romance itself, in the grander scheme of things, has actually had a relative plateau of consistency for the past 20 years or so. That's mainly because of two reasons, in my opinion. One, anime itself started to really pick up beyond the long series mainstays around that time, and two, it is actually hard to quantify what constitutes as a romance anime. For example, Ai Yori Aoshi is clearly a romance. It's a story about love between people, but then what about Naruto? Well, again, it's pretty obviously not one, though it does have a good chunk of romantic elements to it like crushes and makeout sessions. But then you get into more opaque territory. Would you classify Princess Tutu as a romance anime? It has elements of one, like forlorn love and the expressing of one's turmoils as an outlet to visualize those feelings, but it also has a strong emphasis on growth as a person and as an artist by means of the simple draw towards art, not romance. What about Full Metal Panic? It's an action-packed mecha geopolitical war story, but the central characters happen to be teenagers who are very much going through puberty, to a point where it actually does become a character motivation. Again, you could make an argument either way, but my overall point is, you can't mathematically design romance to your whims. And trust me, as an Asian, that sounds weird to me too. The apps keep lying to me. But to put it more accurately, there is no emphatic formula to the R's and R nots of love in anime, or at least one that I figured out yet. It just has to be a balance that designs around the unique story plan of each show. And of course, that's a good thing. I've gone on about tropes and cliches here and there, and you'll still see those for as long as anime plagues this earth, but as I've been saying, there are more layers to it all. Imagine if Princess Tutu had the same beats and tricks to Full Metal Panic, or vice versa. They would be wildly different shows, but also be the same show. And frankly, I'd probably watch them. No, romantic elements work in tandem with how they can elevate the pieces to their peak. And it's with this combination of factors that helped the genre get along in the years. So now we have shows in the limelight and stuck in obscurity, but the romance themselves do have this presence to them. One of, I'm never gonna get this stain out, am I? Even the best scrubs can't wash them out. So you have some notable ones that pioneer how romance could be approached like Oh My Goddess and Clannad, all the way up to newer shows that flaunt the better understanding of using story elements to their advantage like Re:Zero and High School Girl. This also leads to more infamous names to the concept. Whether or not you like Rent-A-Girlfriend is one thing, but the fact that it's a household name at all says a reasonable amount about the growth of the genre. Variety is a spice in fiction I think we often take for granted. And with romance, the spices of genres, there are bound to be those that fizzle out, and those that rise to their heat. So as we see the rise and dissipation of new shows each season, whatever stories they tell will have that flavoring of the same old, as well as something new to chew on. And speaking in terms of variety itself, yeah, that's probably the biggest selling point to it. From the broad strokes of vanilla romance to the more unconventional means of, well, anime, there's no shortage of not just how to frame a story, but who to frame it around. Couples, or groups of people in a lot of cases, are the bread and butter of romance. The spelling of emotional connection by mutual means is a very human draw, which is where the strength of the story lies. If the chemistry between a couple is weak, why should we care? It also helps that in very inhuman situations, there's still a case to be made. That's just what anime specializes in. So yeah, you will believe a man and a gender-bent warlord can love. Not well, but they can. Actually, it's not really that believable either. Anyway, the more famous of romance subgenres include the very hit-and-miss rom-coms, where suffering is part of the process of being committed, and harems, where apparently no one has self-respect. Now, I enjoy a good rom-com harem myself every now and then. They could be good filler shows for when I have nothing else in my 200 item to watch list. But there's also a certain staleness to them, even more so than regular love stories. So when a good one does do something new, it's all the more fun. And then there are the trends. Romance trends are something else, because they're either spaced out like garbage day ready to take out the trash, or a suffocating smorgasbord of a pizza buffet, and the cooks aren't washing their hands. For example, there's the mystery girl who's the destined love story, a la 2012's Nakaimo, 2014's Nisekoi, and 2019's quintessential quintuplets. Then you have the sister anime of the 2010s, and yeah, I'm not listing all those. Nakaimo's 2 for 2 on that one. Let's see if it's the Michael Jordan of romance trends if it can get a three-peat. What about romance where at least one of the main characters is a sociopathic weirdo? That's a shame. I guess it's more of a Craig Hodges then. Monster girls, robots, knights and magicians, athletes, rock stars, gangsters, yokai, magical girls, sentai heroes, they just hit different. But what about the ones that hit the same? Yuri and yaoi are some of the more popular subgenres of romance as, well, they're often either depicted in the most pure, innocent sense, or in a very taboo but exciting way. And let me just tell you, I'm definitely not an expert on the real-world application of them. I'm barely an expert in hetero relations. I watch Bloom Into You for the same reason I watch Fighting Girl Senpai. It's entertaining. Plus, they have really good hentai. I'm not gonna dive too deeply on these topics because frankly, I want to come back to them in another video, but at the very least, there's some nice representation as well as thoughtful storytelling that go into them that make them far more genuine than what a casual observer may encounter. Granted, there are instances of very obvious fan service and gratification of fetishizing them too, but that's kind of the territory of anime and the ecchi hentai business anyway. So, equal, I guess? Well, the overall depiction of romance in anime in general, whether it's a pair of kids finding themselves, a whole group vying for one schlub's attention, love found in the midst of war, or two players on the same team forging bonds, is both impressive and encouraging. Romance is one of the few genres that can communicate to a basic level, along with comedy, drama, and coming of age because of how grounded and relatable it is. When you pair it with the absurd but unapologetic parts of Japanese storytelling, it becomes a staple in not just anime as a genre, but as a means to progress writing, emotions, and questions on theming and direction. Of course, there are people who aren't just into that, and that's completely fine too. But even then, as a social species, humans draw upon the art they need to convey. There's a certain poetry to be said in finding how many tales of love there are, and the sheer amount of variety that are taken in every year, let alone every season. There's sort of a meta-allegory. There's a story for everyone. You may not find it soon, but who's to deny the future? Well, that was a good distraction from a very lonely life, but now, if you'll excuse me, I think I'm gonna try this dating app that actually claims to have some sort of formula. You know, when it says Tinder, I didn't think it'd light my phone on fire. 1.5 stars.